Does success breed success? Well, I know one car company that hopes so. That's this week on Motoring 2004.
TSN's Motoring 2004 is brought to you by Quaker State Motor Oil. Oils fine-tuned for different engines. And Midas, Total Car Care. We do that.
You know, one of my all-time favorite comedians is Rodney, I get no respect, Dangerfield. And this week we're going to visit with a company that for many years was the Rodney Dangerfield of the automobile industry. And that company is Hyundai. And it built a vehicle that ended up being both a blessing and a curse. And that vehicle is the Pony. They sold a ton of them. It put them on the map, but not for reliability. Well, things have changed and changed for the better for Hyundai, and the sales figures prove it. But this is a company that is not about to stand still. It has built a $1 billion manufacturing plant in Alabama, and it has an R&D center in Irvine, California. And this week, we're going to check out a couple of vehicles whose success has given Hyundai the confidence to now go after some bigger fish.
Santa Fe has been so successful that we can't get enough. Globally, demand is so high that we have to literally fight with the factory to get our fair share. The 3.5 gives us just a much more powerful engine and addresses a whole nother segment in that intermediate compact SUV market.
The Santa Fe, we've added a 3.5-liter V6 engine, putting out 200 horsepower versus the previous engine, or the engine that still comes in the Santa Fe, the 2.7-liter, putting out 170 horsepower. The drivetrain has changed from a constant four-wheel drive system to a on-demand four-wheel drive system, so electronically controlled, which is very nice. So it's actually running in two-wheel drive, and when the wheels slip, the rear wheels slip, it'll put up to 50% of the power to the back wheels. The Elantra is freshened up for 2004. We added constant variable valve timing engine into the vehicle, so it changes it's now better in emissions, changing from a low emissions vehicle to an ultra low emissions vehicle, slightly increased horsepower and better fuel economy.
Well, the Elantra competes in the biggest market segment in the industry, and the Elantra has done very well for us. It represents about a third of our sales, and now with a redesigned Elantra, we're looking for even bigger things from it. People look at me a little strange when I say this, but really we have probably the most potential of any manufacturer at this point in time. In the last 4 years, we've tripled our volume. We've gone from 23,000 sales up to just about 70,000 sales in a period of 3 or 4 years.
Well, Hyundai, what it needs to do is expand its product line into some of the niches it doesn't play in. For the last few years, you've seen them focus on the burgeoning sport utility market. You've seen them focus on the small car market, where basically the domestic manufacturers have almost given up offering low-price transportation. Now, if they really want to make money, well, pickup trucks, large sport utilities, that's going to be really tough, because now they're going after owners who are intensely loyal to Ford, Chevy, and Dodge, pickup sport utilities.
Well, that's something that's on the drawing board for sure, and our president of Hyundai Motor Company announced not too long ago that pickup truck looks like a definite possibility for 2007. We're going to bring out just about in a 3-year period 10 all-new products to the marketplace.
And of course, Hyundai's relationship in the global marketplace is with Daimler Chrysler. Hyundai is allied with a company that is really rather distracted. Could that be a good thing? Maybe the people from Stuttgart will just leave them alone, because what Hyundai's been doing all along for the last 10 years has been pretty good.
and I'm not going to take it anymore. Hey, I could use that tease every week. More later on Kenzie's Corner.
You know, the concept car that was to become the Chevrolet Corvette had one, and Suzuki even stuffed one in a motorbike, but only Mazda managed to master it. I'm talking, of course, about a rotary engine. This week on Test Drive, we take a look at the rotary-powered RX8. Mazda has long had a soft spot for the rotary engine. The unit in the RX8 is the ultimate expression of the love affair. In base form, the new Renesis rotary engine develops 210 horsepower. However, the high-output engine in the GT model tested ups this to a rewarding 247 stallions. The beauty of the rotary engine is that all of its power is developed completely seamlessly, with the engine spinning up to its 9,000 RPM red line without sounding as though it's within a single rev of blowing up. Indeed, it's so smooth the car has got a built-in beep to warn you that you've just blasted through the rev limiter. All of this power is relayed to the rear wheels through a delightfully direct 6-speed manual box. The light clutch action and short shifts mean just a quick flick of the wrist grabs the next cog. It is an eminently drivable package, to say the least. You know, there is but one drawback to the rotary engine, and that is that in many respects it's very much like a very short-stroke inline 4-cylinder engine, in that it just does not develop very much torque at low RPM. However, there is a saving grace. The very fact that it is a rotary engine means that it spins up to speed very, very quickly, and therefore masks the torque deficiency very effectively. The only time you notice it? Well, if you try and peel rubber when you pull away from a stop sign, you're going to be sadly lacking. For the record, the GT develops a measly 159 pounds-feet of torque at a lofty 5,500 RPM. Thankfully, those that select the automatic version do get a moderately better 164 pounds-feet at a lower 5,000 RPM. The reworked engine is also better than any rotary before it, as it gets 20% better fuel economy and meets low-emission vehicle standards. It also develops the most power per litre of displacement on the market at the moment, easily beating the Honda S2000, the former champ. You know, when you get into the RX8, it becomes very obvious that the car was designed very much around the driver. The seats, for instance, well, they hug you without pinching. The steering wheel and the relationship between it, the seat, and the pedals is just about perfect. Elsewhere, you get all the toys you want. A good sounding radio, automatic climate controls, the whole 9 yards. About the only thing to bitch about, well, it's the size of the speedo. There is no conventional sweep dial. Rather, what you've got is a little tiny digital readout. And given the speed at which this thing gets to speed, trying to keep a track of how fast you're going using that silly little digital readout is rather difficult. Dynamically, the RX8 is well endowed. A combination of double wishbones up front and a 5-link design in back forms the basic suspension, with gas-filled shocks, coil springs and anti-roll bars at both ends. The design is exceptionally well balanced for two important reasons. First, there is nothing of significant weight outside the wheelbase, which reduces the risk of a spin, and second, when compared to the RX7, the 8's centre of gravity is 40mm lower. Factor in the 50-50 front to rear weight distribution and you have the makings of a real go-kart. Through the pylons, the RX8 was picture perfect, running the course as quickly as any car ever tested. Access to the rear seat of the RX8 is very simple thanks to this second rear hinge door. Once you get in, well, you'll find plenty of toe room, plenty of knee room and abundant headroom. About the only thing I don't like, and it really does show up on a longer trip, is the fact that everything seems to close in on you. This headrest seems to come back, and because the window in the door is rather small, well, you tend to feel a little claustrophobic. Stopping power comes from a strong set of vented discs and the latest anti-lock system. It gets 2 thumbs up. The first for the balanced pedal feel, the second for being almost completely devoid of brake fade, even after repeated high-speed stops. Dynamic stability control is also offered on the GT. Thankfully, the system can be turned off when desired. Pressing the button once allows a little tail action before it steps in to save the day. However, holding the button for 7 seconds completely disengages the system. Now, this is one of the few cars where this is actually possible, and so a well-deserved hats off to Mazda for having the balls to go for it. You know, the RX8 is a car that just does not conform to the norm. It's radical in the handling department, radical in its style, and radical in its use of a rotary engine. But best of all, you know, it's radical in the pricing department. At just under 40 large for this GT model, well, very few cars can touch it when it comes to the bang for the buck.
Our Midas tip of the week concerns four-wheel drive vehicles. You know, even if you live in an area of the country with really rough weather, there's still large chunks of the year when you don't really need your four-wheel drive. And you know that saying, use it or lose it? Well, if you have a part-time four-wheel drive vehicle, those words can be very true. It's a good idea to occasionally engage the four-wheel drive system. I would suggest that anytime you get a chance to drive on dirt or gravel roads with a part-time four-wheel drive vehicle, periodically put it into four-wheel drive, whether you need it or not. That'll do a number of things. First of all, it'll engage the front axle. It'll also move around the lubricants that lubricate the extra U-joints in these types of vehicles. And if the grease in these U-joints just sits stationary for a long period of time, never gets warmed up, it doesn't get distributed, and you will actually have problems where the U-joints will seize long before you'll ever wear them out. So you want to move that lubricant around and warm them up and keep things moving, keep things working properly. That'll help lower your maintenance costs on your four-wheel drive vehicle. That's your Midas tip of the week.
Student was given the same creative challenge to design an essential transportation vehicle that is fun, economical, useful, and which reflects that country where the student resides. The different challenges of the country or city's infrastructure were carefully considered by the jury as an important part of the overall solution to the design challenge.
I guess the first thing we did was to look at stats and find out where the problems were. So things like the congestion, disabilities, and how the city infrastructure was working. So where it is now, where it's heading. Population growth is not just growing in the city, but it's growing in the suburbs as well.
There are too many people in the city, and too many of them are buying cars. And not only are they buying cars, they're buying more and more cars. So there's so many cars on the roads, and we're expecting so many more people in the city of Toronto. And we just wanted to change it. And if there are going to be cars, let's make them non-toxic.
Our car is a little more on the cute side of things as opposed to the sleek and fast. And that, I think, is an inspiration for us too, is to make it stand out, make it different, and make it iconic for the city of Toronto. How does it pick up on references within the city? So you have the BCE building, you have the structure, the arches that you see, there's the Humber Bridge, you have the Sky Dome. And so we went more with that rounded feeling.
The opportunity here is for students to compete in a world competition, so that they're not just a Canadian operation, that they really get an opportunity to see what the world is doing in automotive design.
The winner is Sung Young Kim from Hong-Ik University in Seoul, Korea. Well done.
The winning design was really interesting. I thought it was an innovative solution for the problems that their city had to deal with. And it was so, oh God, the sketches were gorgeous, like stunning, you know, fast sketches. The presentation was well done. I was impressed.
I think that car companies have realized that the pool of inventive talent lies within the design department. More and more today, they look towards the design department to be the inventors of new products, new ideas.
Well, as you know, the Hyundai Elantra comes in two models, the GL and this GT, and I love this new blue color. And speaking of the GT, one of our cameramen, Dan Bailey, owns a GT, his second Elantra, and Pete McCallum, who is shooting today, is now driving a GL, and both of them are thrilled with the vehicles. And for you cynics, neither one got any manufacturer's discount. That's not reality, believe me. Anyway, let's head to the Quaker State Garage and ask Bill Gardner what he thinks of Hyundai product.
Well, Brad, you know everybody used to poke fun at Hyundai in the early years about problems with their cars, but you know what? Those early Hyundai vehicles were dead simple to fix, so they never really hurt you that bad even when you had trouble with them, so I could live with them. Anyhow, I want to talk about a problem that you probably can't live with, and that's if you have a vehicle with McPherson strut front suspension. Now that's most front-wheel drive cars, the odd rear-wheel drive vehicle, and the lighter duty sport utilities, or what we call the sport cutes. Most of these vehicles have McPherson strut front suspension. There's one critical part in a McPherson strut that can cause you some real problems, and that's the strut mounting plate. Here's a brand new one I've got in my hand. Now in this particular car, when we turn the steering, the strut plate allows a McPherson strut front suspension car, allows the steering to rotate freely while supporting all the weight in the front of the car. And if I grasp this one in the center, the bearing portion, this part here where the spring sits would rotate around the strut, allowing the car to steer freely. Now if this thing becomes partially seized, you will have symptoms such as noise at low speed when you turn the steering. The coil spring will actually make a banging or twanging noise as you turn, and you'll have a pulling condition. For example, after you go around a tight right-hand turn and let go of the steering, the vehicle won't want to straighten up, and then it'll want to pull to the right. And the same thing after you've gone around a tight left-hand turn. We refer to that as memory steer. In any case, it's often tightness in this strut plate. Now this is an old strut plate that we replaced on an identical car to this one, and when I grasp it in the middle, I can't turn it at all. It's locked right up. Now when this was on the car, however, the mechanical advantage of the steering would turn this thing, but it wouldn't turn smoothly. It would turn in a jerky fashion, so you'd hear noise from the spring and you'd have that pull. This is definitely not a do-it-yourselfer type of repair. If the strut plates in your vehicle need replacing, you've got to have a qualified mechanic. You need special tools, you need a spring compressor, a lot of tension on that spring, so there can be some danger involved when you're compressing it. You also want to have a look at the strut itself to make sure that it's not damaged or leaking or due to be replaced. If it is, this is something you want to pick up at the same time. You've also got to finish off with a wheel alignment. So make sure that if your vehicle exhibits one of those problems like a memory steer, a severe pull, or noise in the front end when you steer at low speeds, you have a look at these strut plates and replace them if necessary. Till next week, I'm Bill Gardner for Motoring 2004.
We're here in beautiful BC, what Maclean's magazine writer Alan Fotheringham calls British California. Yes, it's the granola province, because once you get rid of the nuts and the fruits, all you've got left are the flakes. Now, is this another example of Eastern arrogance? Nah, I'm just having a bit of fun with you. Some of my best friends are BCers, and I wouldn't even mind if my sister married one. Now, BC is also the home of the Insurance Corporation of British Columbia, government-run car insurance. They claim they can give better service, better coverage, and lower rates. Other provinces in Canada also have public insurance. But a think tank called the Fraser Institute claims that provinces with public insurance have higher fatality rates than those with private. They say it's because the public companies are forced by politics to insure everybody and to subsidize the younger and usually worse drivers. Hence, more risk, hence, more deaths. One thing we do know, private or public, insurance rates in this country have gone crazy. Now, the insurance companies claim they don't make any money on car insurance. So they're in the business. Why? And they get those Taj Mahal head office buildings where? I think the reason that they're losing money is mostly because of 9/11. That killed the entire insurance industry. And because they took our premiums and made lousy investments with them. And who's paying? We are. And yet the stats show we're having fewer crashes and fewer deaths. And our premiums are going up. Is anybody else confused by this? And if the rates aren't bad enough, their corporate company consumer relations are even worse. One friend of mine was insured with this company for years. 5 years ago, he had 2 minor claims. One was his fault, he admits. They continued to insure him for the last 5 years. And now this year, they decided he's an unacceptable risk. He's cut off. And because the old boys network gets into play here, no one else will take him on either. He's beat. Now, long term, the only way we're going to reduce premiums is by reducing losses. We've got better cars. We've got better roads. The only thing you as an individual can do is become a better driver. Now, I know you're all great drivers, but you can never be too good. And if you take an advanced driver training program, the insurance company, assuming they're still talking to you, might even give you a discount. It does happen here in BC. I'm Jim Kenzie.
Before we go, let's review what we've learned about Hyundai this week. We've learned this is a company ready to expand into other segments, and down the road, we're looking at a minivan and a pickup truck. As for the Santa Fe, well, I got to admit, I don't understand this segment anyway, because I think you've got as much room in an Elantra as you do in a sport utility like this. But having said that, this is a better vehicle with that new 3.5 V6. And speaking of the Santa Fe, the other day a friend of mine mentioned to me what other people have said, and that is they think the Santa Fe looks a lot like the Porsche Cayenne. And I know that brings smiles to the executives at Hyundai. As for Porsche, well, let's not even comment on that. That's it for now. We'll see you next time out as we continue to bring you more stories about cars and the people who drive them.
If you look at the fuel and the fuel properties and the influence that the fuel has on the emission control system, clean up the fuel, that the combination of the two of them really can get some remarkable reductions. In fact, these vehicles in the life cycle analysis is equivalent to driving an all-battery electric vehicle. That's a rather profound statement from my perspective.
TSN's Motoring 2004 has been brought to you by Quaker State Motor Oil, oils fine-tuned for different engines, and Midas, Total Car Care. We do that.